Recovery is stupendous.
Achievable.
Hope.
Freedom.
Empowering.
It's unique to everyone.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Getting a new lease on life.
It's finding restoration after you fall down.
Recovery is having the freedom to enjoy life.
For me, it was finding a way to really love myself.
My recovery is possible in part because of my own sense of purpose.
Welcome to Recovery Talks. I'm Leah Wetzel, and we have a wonderful guest with us today. I'm pleased to announce my coworker, Nikki Russell. She's here to talk a little bit about herself, the pilot project she's running, and been excited to get her on here just one-on-one. Nikki, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners that don't already know you?
Well, I am Nikki Russell, and I have been in recovery for about 7.5 years. I come from an abstinence program, a 12-step program, and my passion has a lot to do with trauma-informed care. It has a lot to do with spirituality, a spiritual solution. And Montana Peer Network is my dream job. So I'm here with this pilot project, Southwest Montana Community Coalition for Pregnant and Parenting People with a Substance Use Disorder and an Opioid Use Disorder. That's what got me working with Montana's Peer Network. So I get to partner together with those two wonderful passions that I have and get to do what I love every day.
That's great. And I'll never forget the first time I met you was when I was getting hired on and signing all my paperwork in Helena. And this woman just has an amazing energy about her. You meet Nikki. Anybody that knows Nikki knows what I'm talking about. You meet Nikki and you want more. She's always so positive and treats people. I think she's naturally trauma-informed herself. And I want to allow you some space to share with our listeners. Where does that come from? Tell us a little bit about where you come from as an individual. How did you make it to where you are today?
So when you were talking and saying all those wonderful things, thank you, Leah. I feel the same way about you. I realize that it comes from being vulnerable. When I grew up, I had to mask myself. I had to put a facade over myself for protection to survive in the environment that I was in. And as I started using at 10 years old, I had a lot of dysfunction going on in my life, as we all do, and I didn't feel like I could be me. So I created this personality that went kind of out before me. And in order to feel okay about that, I needed to use drugs. I needed to drink. I needed to smoke. I needed to just be in that world of just numbing out, basically just numbing out. So as I went through my years, my younger years, my youth years, using and just trying to hide from the world, basically just trying to hide from the world behind that mask, I met somebody who I felt like would save me and who would protect me. And when I ended up pregnant with my daughter, I was not actively using in my pregnancy, but I was actively in my trauma. And my trauma was what created my substance use. So when I had my daughter, I ended up being re-traumatized and having postpartum depression and not realizing if I would have had somebody like me, a peer support that could have been vulnerable, who would have been willing to take off that mask and show me that it's okay to be who you are, and that is actually the best way to be, and that's the safest way to be, that would have really helped me. So that's the that's the amazing, thing that I get to do every day is I get to be with these people and I get to be vulnerable with them and I get to show them, it's okay. It's okay to be you. It's okay to show the world who you really are. That's where the spirituality piece comes in for me too.
That's
Eh,
beautiful, Nikki. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. We do. I had layers and layers and layers and layers of masks by the time I got a little bit of sobriety in me before recovery.
Yeah.
And it's a scary feeling. It's we don't even know who we are at that point. And you did an amazing workshop at our MPN conference where you talked about that, where you tell our listeners a little bit about that great workshop.
So this is one of the things that I'm going to be doing with the coalition that I'm in and with Montana's Peer Network. So I'm doing what's called the Heart of Recovery, and it is art and recovery blended together to create authenticity, basically. And what that is for me is recovery. I mean, recovery is all about being your authentic self and feeling safe enough to go out into the world that way, right? So the mask that the mask that we wear, like you were just talking about, like I was just talking about, is there for protection, and it hides all of the beauty. And it helps us. Like when I look back on my substance use, if I wouldn't have had that mask on and if I wouldn't have been using, there was a time in my life that I don't think I would have survived. It served a really great purpose for me. But now in recovery, it doesn't. I need to take that mask off to show the world who I really am, and actually to live the purpose of why I actually am here. Like there's something beautiful behind that mask in all of us. And so what I did during that class was I had everybody bring their inside to the outside and show, like, what would you show the world if you felt safe? What would you want to say to the world? What would you want them to know about you, deep inside? And it was a great class. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing in person, that and many other classes, and also online.
Oh, that's the group online.
That's the group. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it's going to be on Thursday evenings at 6:30, every Thursday at 6:30 to 7:30, the online group will be.
Where do they find that login information? And
that's on our events calendar at Montana Peer Network.
So you go to Montana Peer Network website and it's on the events calendar. And then you got that coalition to lean on too. So that's pretty groovy. You got
I like that word, groovy.
you got you got support in all corners too.
Yeah.
You're highly focused and you're highly passionate about your spirituality. And I think that's past the framework of this program, like you said, before we even started, Nikki and I had a conversation and she's like, I think the most important part is sharing my authentic self, because how are people going to want to connect and come to group, have something to do with this if they don't hear a bit of my story? And that's so true. And I think it's really important for them to hear your spirituality and how you got to be where you are, strong, independent woman that you are.
Wow, that's a great question. So my spirituality comes from, it began in recovery. So it began with me understanding. So one of the things that I always wanted to do that I could never figure out how to do was to forgive. I always felt like if I could forgive, then I could have peace. I was so angry at the people at my family, at the people who victimized me. You know, I was so angry. I couldn't let that go because I couldn't forgive. And once I learned how to forgive and I started to meditate and I started to pray and I started to journal and I started to what's the other things that I started to do? Well, I guess those are the main things. I'll just talk about those things. Those are the main things. So meditation was huge for me. And when I started to dive deep and I was able to understand that these things were not there to hurt me, they were there for my benefit. You know, that's one of the things that we talked about, Leah, you and I, was that everything that happened to me in my life, all the way up to this point, was there for my education. It was there to help me so that I could help other people. Our story is so important to be able to share with people. That's part of the connection, you know, and I need to be healing in my life and actively in my spirituality in order to connect with people. And another one of the wonderful things that I do with my spirituality is the native culture is really important to me. I do native ceremony at least once a week, and I clear out my energy. I smudge. I have learned a lot of really valuable ways of living my life spiritually. Like spirituality is a way of life for me. So, and a lot of that, at least like the big missing piece, came from the native culture for me.
I love that. And, you know, our ways were meant for everybody. There was a point in time where we couldn't, quote unquote, practice or really be who we were meant to be because of assimilation policies and, you know, being prosecuted for speaking, doing our ceremony, speaking our language. And I think how you came to meet your person that led you into that has a lot to do with how our people survived, how we survived by taking this underground and continuing it in places like Butte or continued it in places like Great Falls. You know, there are ceremonies in these urban areas, and that's important. Some lodges around here, they'll be like, you know, Blackfeet tradition, Sioux and Cree, you know, and that's because they did that to be able to, hey, brother, I want to continue to practice our ways, or hey, relative. And so they make it their own, and that was to continue for survival. And I'm like, I can't wait to meet your friend. Pretty sure I seen her at the powwow when we was down there, Calvin and I, and she was just exactly how you explained her. She had a bunch of crystals, and
Yeah.
you know, she went out, danced, and I'm like, that's got to be her. But she was so busy. So, but I think that's great, and I think that gives you and I that higher connection too. Like we're sitting here talking, or I'm listening to you, but we're like kind of having this other conversation above, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I'm so grateful that you joined me today, and I want to give you an opportunity if there's anything else, any other message that you would want to share, and then remind our listeners how to get a hold of you if they're interested.
Okay. Yeah, I want to say that I think we need to be really open to other people's experiences and culture. I think it expands us, it grows us, it helps us to feel safe. It helps us to remember that we're not alone in the world. I think a lot of times in our, you know, addiction, that we were lacking connection. And part of the reason why we were lacking connection is because we felt misunderstood. I felt misunderstood. And as soon as I started to reach out and to ask for help and to understand that just because something wasn't familiar to me didn't mean that it wasn't good for me. And I've learned a lot from other people and other cultures who were completely who I felt were opposite of me. So that has helped me to face my fears and go with and ask for help and face my fears. So like go with somebody who's different, call somebody who's different, connect with somebody who's different than you. And then we end up helping each other out in the process. So that is amazing. And that's been a lot of my recovery. And then how people can get a hold of me is my email address is nikki@montanapeernetwork.org. And my phone number where you can call me is 406-565-3289. And that's open for anybody and everybody to call me with any questions. And especially if you're a pregnant and parenting person and you need somebody and you need help, please call me. And I think that is the two ways that you can get a hold of me. I don't have social media right now, which I'm gonna do that here shortly. But yeah.
I get it. I get it. It just ruins our brains anyway. Yes, get a hold of Nikki, and I tell you what, she's one of the best individuals you'll ever come in contact with. Greatest energies, so pure, and everything she does, it's coming from her heart. And so, yeah, and I love that you say person. So if you're a parenting person, so they could be two-spirited, or they could be men or women, or however you however you acknowledge yourself, she's acknowledging you in that same way. So thank you again, Nikki, and thank you to our listeners. Remember, tune in. We put out a new podcast every week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works. Recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.